happened in 8 seconds. 4 armed men, 1 terrified CEO, and a waiter whose whispered words would change everything. "Stay down." He didn't shout. He didn't run. But in those 8 seconds, he defied every instinct that told him to stay invisible, stay safe, stay silent. What followed would unravel a billion-dollar conspiracy, test the limits of a father's courage, and prove that sometimes the most powerful heroes serve dinner before they serve justice. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed. Because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. The Regency Grand Hotel ballroom glittered like a jewelry box turned inside out. Thousands of tiny lights cascaded from the vaulted ceiling, reflecting off champagne flutes and designer gowns. The air was thick with expensive perfume, quiet laughter, and the soft clink of silverware against fine china. This was the annual Westbridge Tech Summit Gala, where billion-dollar deals were sealed over dessert and political careers were made between courses. At the head table sat Kiana Ford. She was impossible to miss, not because she demanded attention, but because she commanded it naturally. At 38, she was the youngest CEO of Horizon Dynamics, a cybersecurity firm that had revolutionized data protection for hospitals and schools across the nation. Her emerald gown was elegant without being flashy, her dark hair swept into a sophisticated twist. Diamond studs caught the light when she turned her head, but her most striking feature was her eyes. Sharp, intelligent, and tonight, slightly weary. She had been fielding questions all evening from investors, journalists, and politicians eager to align themselves with her success. But now, mercifully, there was a lull. The keynote speech had ended. Dinner was being served. For a brief moment, she allowed herself to simply breathe. The waitstaff moved through the ballroom like shadows, efficient and invisible. One of them approached her table, a man in his early 40s with kind eyes and careful movements. He placed a plate of seared salmon before her with a polite nod. "Enjoy your meal, ma'am," he said quietly. Kiana offered a tired smile. "Thank you." She didn't notice the way his eyes scanned the room. She didn't see how his posture remained alert even as he moved away. She was already turning back to the colleague beside her, preparing for yet another conversation about quarterly projections. Then everything changed. The main doors burst open with a sound like thunder. 4 men stormed into the ballroom, their faces hidden behind black masks, their hands gripping weapons that made the entire room freeze in collective terror. The lead man fired a single shot into the ceiling. Plaster rained down. A chandelier swayed, screams erupted like breaking glass. "Nobody move," the leader shouted, his voice raw and commanding. "Hands where I can see them, now." Chaos rippled through the crowd. Some people dropped to the floor immediately. Others stood frozen, champagne glasses still raised halfway to their lips. A woman near the back sobbed openly. The 4 men spread out with military precision, weapons trained on the crowd. The leader, tall and broad-shouldered, strode directly toward the head table, directly toward Kiana. "Kiana Ford," he announced, his voice carrying across the now silent ballroom. "Stand up." She didn't move. Her heart hammered against her ribs, but her face remained calm. Years of boardroom warfare had taught her never to show fear, even when it clawed at her throat. "I said stand up." He aimed his weapon directly at her. Slowly, she rose. Her legs felt like water, but she kept her chin high. "You're coming with us," the man said. "Your company has something we need, and you're going to give it to us." Around the ballroom, security personnel reached for their radios, But the other armed men were ready. "Touch those radios and people die," one of them shouted. The leader grabbed Kiana's arm roughly, yanking her away from the table. She stumbled but caught herself. Her mind raced. This wasn't random. They knew who she was. They knew what Horizon Dynamics protected. Then she felt it. A presence behind her. Close. Too close. It was the waiter. The one who had served her salmon just moments before. He had moved through the chaos like smoke, unnoticed by the armed men who were focused on controlling the crowd. He leaned in, his mouth near her ear, and whispered 2 words that would echo in her memory forever. "Stay down." Before she could react, he moved. His hand shot out, striking a pressure point on the leader's wrist with surgical precision. The gun clattered to the floor. In the same fluid motion, he swept the man's legs out from under him, sending him crashing into a table. China shattered. Flowers scattered. The second gunman spun toward them, weapon raised. But the waiter was already there. He grabbed a silver serving tray from a nearby cart and used it as a shield, deflecting the man's aim. Then he slammed the tray into the gunman's face with controlled force. The man crumpled. The third attacker lunged from the side. The waiter ducked low, using the man's momentum against him, flipping him over his shoulder in a move so smooth it looked choreographed. The gunman hit the marble floor hard and didn't get up. The fourth man, panicking now, fired wildly. Guests screamed and scattered. But the waiter had already pushed Kiana down behind an overturned table. He shielded her with his own body as bullets ricocheted off marble columns. Then, in a movement almost too fast to follow, he launched himself at the final gunman. A precise strike to the solar plexus. A joint lock that twisted the weapon free. A controlled takedown that left the man gasping on the floor. 8 seconds. 4 armed men neutralized. Not killed. Just stopped. The ballroom was a battlefield of overturned chairs and shattered glass. But no innocent person had been hurt. The waiter stood among the chaos, breathing steadily, his bow tie slightly askew. Security finally rushed in, shouting orders, securing the scene. Police sirens wailed in the distance. And the waiter, this man who had just single-handedly stopped an armed assault, simply straightened his vest, checked on Kiana one last time with a brief nod, and disappeared into the confusion of evacuating guests. Kiana sat on the floor behind the table, her emerald dress torn at the hem, her hair falling loose from its pins. Her hands shook as she pressed them against the cold marble. Someone helped her to her feet. A paramedic appeared, asking if she was hurt. Security surrounded her, apologizing, explaining, promising investigations. But she barely heard them. Her eyes searched the crowd, looking for the waiter with the kind eyes. The man who had whispered, "Stay down," and then defied 4 armed attackers with nothing but his bare hands. He was gone, vanished into the night like he had never existed at all. A police detective approached, notebook in hand. "Ms. Ford, can you describe the man who intervened?" She tried. He was a waiter. 40s maybe. Dark hair, he moved like what? Like a ghost? Like someone who had done this before? Like someone who understood violence the way musicians understand notes? "I don't know," she finished weakly. "But he saved my life." The detective nodded, scribbling notes. "We'll review the security footage. Get a positive ID." But even as he said it, Kiana knew somehow that identifying this man wouldn't be easy. Because men like that, men who moved through danger like water through stones, usually had reasons for staying invisible. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time. So if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. The footage was maddeningly insufficient. 6 different camera angles from the Regency Grand security system, and in every single one, his face was either turned away, shadowed, or obscured by the chaos of fleeing guests. Kiana had watched the recordings 43 times in the past 2 days. She had counted. She sat in her corner office on the 42nd floor of the Horizon Dynamics Tower. The city of Asherton spread out below her like a circuit board of lights and steel. Her assistant had brought coffee 3 hours ago. It sat untouched, cold. On her screen, the waiter moved through the ballroom with impossible fluidity. Frame by frame, she watched him neutralize threats with the kind of precision that spoke of years of training. Not the sloppy desperation of a lucky bystander, but the calculated efficiency of a professional. Who was he? Her head of security, a former federal agent named Vincent Torres, had pulled every piece of data they could find. Hotel employment records showed a man named Parker Drake, hired 6 months ago through a staffing agency. Background check had come back clean. Too clean, Vincent had muttered. No social media presence. Vincent had reported that morning. No digital footprint beyond basic utilities and a lease agreement. It's like he appeared out of nowhere 3 years ago. People don't just appear, Kiana had replied. People running from something do. The Regency Grand's HR department had been apologetic, but firm. Parker Drake had called in the morning after the gala, said he couldn't work there anymore, and that was that. No forwarding address, no contact information beyond a disconnected phone number. He had vanished again. Kiana leaned back in her chair, rubbing her temples. The police were treating her as a victim and a witness, which meant endless statements and depositions. The 4 attackers had been arrested, but weren't talking. They had high-priced lawyers and convenient amnesia about who hired them. But Kiana knew. This wasn't about ransom. It was about Horizon Dynamics' latest development, the Sentinel Protocol, an encryption system that made data breaches virtually impossible. Several competitors had made aggressive offers to acquire her company. She had refused them all. Apparently, some people didn't take no for an answer. Her phone buzzed. A text from her publicist. Media requests are insane. They're calling you the Gala Guardian Angel story. Want to make a statement? Kiana deleted the message. She didn't want publicity. She wanted answers. A soft knock on her door. Her assistant, Monica, peeked in. Ms. Ford? The cleaning crew found something in the ballroom. They thought you might want it. Monica placed a small plastic bag on her desk. Inside was a child's hair clip, bright purple with a cartoon unicorn on it. It was under the table where you were during the incident, Monica explained. They weren't sure if it was yours or... Kiana picked up the bag slowly. It definitely wasn't hers. She turned it over, and that's when she saw it. On the back of the clip, written in permanent marker in careful handwriting, Lily D. Her breath caught. Thank you, Monica. After her assistant left, Kiana sat staring at the hair clip. A daughter. The waiter had a daughter named Lily. She thought back to that night, to the moment before everything exploded into violence. Had there been someone with him? She couldn't remember seeing anyone. But the ballroom had been crowded, and she had been distracted. The next morning, Kiana did something she hadn't done in years. She went to the Regency Grand herself, not as a CEO, but as a woman looking for answers. The event coordinator, a nervous young man named Justin, met her in the lobby. Ms. Ford, I'm so sorry about what happened. We've increased security protocols, and we're reviewing. I'm not here about security, Kiana interrupted gently. I'm looking for information about one of your waitstaff. Parker Drake. Justin's expression shifted, uncomfortable. I'm not supposed to discuss employee information. Kiana pulled out her checkbook. I'm not looking to cause him trouble. I just want to thank him properly. He saved my life. Something in her tone must have reached him, because Justin sighed and said, he was a good worker. Quiet, always professional, but he kept to himself. Did he ever mention family? A daughter? Justin's eyes lit up with recognition. Oh, Lily. Yeah, he brought her to the staff holiday party. Sweet kid. Maybe 9 or 10. She was drawing pictures at one of the tables while the staff ate. She gave me one, actually. Do you still have it? 5 minutes later, Kiana stood in the hotel's break room, holding a piece of construction paper. The drawing showed 2 stick figures, one tall with Daddy written above it, one small with Me written above it. They were holding hands under a rainbow. At the bottom, in that same careful handwriting, family is everything. Lily Kiana felt something crack open in her chest. This man, this ghost who had saved her life, was someone's whole world. He was a father doing his best, working a modest job, raising a daughter alone. And he had risked everything to protect a stranger. She took a photo of the drawing with her phone, thanked Justin, and left the hotel with more questions than answers. But now she had something she didn't have before. A name. Lily. That evening, Kiana sat in her penthouse apartment, the city lights twinkling below like fallen stars. She held the purple hair clip in her palm, turning it over slowly. Most people would have moved on by now. Security had been increased. The attackers were in custody. Life could return to normal. But Kiana couldn't let it go. Not because she felt she owed him, though she did, but because something about Parker Drake had shaken her foundation. In a world where everyone wanted something from her, where every interaction was transactional, he had helped her and asked for nothing. He had whispered, "Stay down," and then put himself between her and bullets. Who did that? Who moved through life that selflessly? She needed to find him. Not to repay him. You couldn't put a price on a life saved. But to understand, to thank him, to know that people like him still existed. Kiana opened her laptop and began to search. If Parker Drake wanted to stay hidden, she would respect that eventually. But first, she would try everything in her power to find him. Because somewhere in this city, a father was teaching his daughter that helping people mattered. And Kiana wanted to tell him that his lesson had been received, that his daughter should be proud, that he was exactly the kind of hero the world needed, even if he didn't see himself that way. She would find Parker Drake, and when she did, she would make sure he knew that his 8 seconds of courage had changed everything. The apartment was small but clean, tucked on the 3rd floor of a modest building in the Oak Ridge district, where rent was affordable and neighbors minded their own business. 2 bedrooms, 1 bathroom, a kitchen barely big enough for 2 people, and a living room where mismatched furniture told stories of thrift store Saturdays and careful budgeting. Parker Drake stood at the kitchen counter, making peanut butter and jelly sandwiches for tomorrow's lunch. The clock on the microwave read 9:47 p.m. In the living room, his daughter Lily sat cross-legged on the worn couch, colored pencils scattered around her like fallen leaves. She was working on her homework, a poster about community helpers. So far, she had drawn a firefighter, a doctor, and a teacher. Now she was adding someone new. "Dad?" she called out. "Yeah, sweetheart." "What do you call someone who stops bad guys, but isn't a police officer?" Parker's hand paused mid-spread. He set down the knife carefully. "Why do you ask?" because that's what you did. He walked into the living room, drying his hands on a dish towel. Lily looked up at him with eyes that were far too perceptive for someone who had just turned 10 last month. "I saw you," she said simply. "At the gala. I was in the coat check room, remember? You told me to stay there and color. But I peeked out when I heard the scary noises." Parker sat down beside her, suddenly feeling very tired. "Lily, you were amazing," she continued, her voice filled with pride. "Like a superhero. Those men had guns, and you stopped them. Nobody got hurt because of you." He pulled her close, wrapping an arm around her small shoulders. "I was scared the whole time." "Really? Really? Being brave doesn't mean you're not scared. It means you do the right thing even when you are." Lily leaned her head against his chest. "Is that why we had to move again? Because you did the right thing?" Parker's throat tightened. This was the conversation he had been dreading. "Yeah. Sometimes when you help people, it causes complications." "The lady you saved, was she nice?" "I think so. But I didn't really get to talk to her." "Do you think she's looking for you?" Parker was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, "Probably. But that doesn't mean she'll find us." "Would that be bad? If she did?" He thought about how to answer that. How to explain to a 10-year-old that visibility was dangerous, that staying hidden kept them safe, that every time he stepped into the light, shadows followed. "It's complicated, Lilybug." She pulled back to look at him. "You always say that when you don't want to explain." He smiled despite himself. "When did you get so smart?" "I've always been smart. You just finally noticed." Parker laughed, a real laugh that felt good in his chest. "All right, smarty pants. Finish your homework, then bed." After Lily had brushed her teeth and climbed under her constellation-patterned blankets, she asked one more question. "Dad, why did you become a waiter? You used to do important stuff." Parker sat on the edge of her bed, tucking the blankets around her. "I wanted to do something quiet. Something safe." "But you're not safe when people need help. You can't help it." He didn't have an answer for that because she was absolutely right. After Lily fell asleep, Parker stood in the doorway of her room, watching her breathe. The purple unicorn hair clip sat on her nightstand, the one she had been wearing at the gala. She must have dropped it in all the chaos. He thought about that night, about the moment he had seen those armed men storming toward Kiana Ford. Every instinct had screamed at him to stay invisible, to keep his head down, to protect himself and Lily by doing nothing. But then he had looked at Kiana's face, seen the fear she was trying to hide, seen the way she stood tall even as weapons were aimed at her. And he had remembered why he used to do what he did. Before everything fell apart. Before he became a ghost. Parker walked to his own bedroom, opened the closet, and pulled out a box from the top shelf. Inside were remnants of his old life. Certificates of completion from executive protection courses. A letter of recommendation from a security firm that no longer existed. Photos of him in a suit, standing beside wealthy clients at galas, not unlike the one at the Regency Grand. He had been good at that job, protecting people, reading threats, staying 3 steps ahead of danger. But then came the incident, the one that changed everything. 3 years ago, he had been lead security for a prominent judge who was receiving death threats. Parker had identified the threat, tracked it, neutralized it. But in doing so, he had exposed corruption that went higher than anyone expected. Powerful people wanted the information buried, and they wanted anyone connected to it erased. Parker had been forced to make a choice: testify and put Lily in danger, or disappear and keep her safe. He chose his daughter. He always chose his daughter. So he had taken a new name, moved to a new city, and built a quiet life. No more executive protection, no more putting himself in positions where his skills would be noticed. Just waitering, dishwashing, anything that paid the bills and kept them under the radar. But 8 seconds at the Regency Grand had shattered that invisibility. Parker closed the box and shoved it back into the closet. He couldn't afford to be found. Not by Kiana Ford's people, not by journalists looking for a feel-good story, and definitely not by the people from his past who had long memories and longer reach. He climbed into bed, but didn't sleep. Instead, he stared at the ceiling, thinking about the purple hair clip on Lily's nightstand. Had she dropped it at the gala? Had someone found it? And if they had, would they be smart enough to use it to find him? Parker closed his eyes. Tomorrow, he would find a new job. Maybe in a different part of the city. Maybe they would need to move again. Because staying ahead of your past required constant motion. And Parker Drake had been running for 3 years. He just hadn't expected Kiana Ford's eyes to follow him into his dreams that night. Those intelligent, grateful eyes that had looked at him like he was someone worth remembering. He pushed the thought away. She would move on. People always did. And he would fade back into the background where men like him belonged. But in the living room, Lily's poster lay on the coffee table. And the newest community helper she had drawn wore a bow tie and carried a serving tray. Underneath, in careful letters, she had written, "My dad, a hero who helps when no one else will." Kiana Ford had built a billion-dollar company by understanding patterns. Data left trails, and trails led to answers. People were no different than code in that regard. Everyone left digital footprints, transaction histories, connection points. Parker Drake, however, seemed to exist in the white space between data points. She sat in a private conference room at Horizon Dynamics with Vincent Torres, her head of security, and a woman named Sandra Yates, a private investigator who specialized in finding people who didn't want to be found. Sandra spread a thin folder across the table. For 3 weeks of work, it was disturbingly light on content. Parker Drake. Sandra began, her voice crisp and professional. First appearance in any database. 3 years and 2 months ago. Lease agreement for an apartment in the Oak Ridge district. Utilities opened under his name. Basic checking account at Asherton Community Bank. Before that? Kiana asked. Nothing. No birth certificate in that name, no school records, no employment history. Parker Drake didn't exist before 3 years ago. Vincent leaned forward. So it's an assumed identity. Almost certainly, Sandra confirmed. But whoever created it knew what they were doing. Social security number is legitimate, passed all standard background checks. He's either in witness protection or he's running from something. Kiana felt a chill run down her spine. What about the daughter? Sandra pulled out a photograph, printed from a school database. A young girl with bright eyes and a cautious smile. Lily Drake, age 10, enrolled at Brookfield Elementary 3 years ago. Records indicate she was homeschooled prior to that. No previous school transcripts available. So she's real, Kiana said softly. Very much so. By all accounts, she's an excellent student. Teachers describe her as bright, kind, and unusually mature for her age. Father is listed as primary guardian. No mother listed on any documentation. Vincent pulled up something on his tablet. I did some digging on my end. Found something interesting. The employment agency that placed Parker at the Regency Grand. They specialize in placing workers who need flexible schedules, often single parents. But they also have a reputation for not asking too many questions. Sandra nodded. I spoke with his previous employers. Before the Regency, he worked as a dishwasher at Lou's Diner on 5th Street, a janitor at West Side Office Complex, and did overnight stocking at a grocery store. Never stayed anywhere longer than 8 months, always left on good terms, always gave notice. Everyone described him the same way. How? Kiana asked. Quiet, competent, kind, kept to himself but was always polite. Several people mentioned he was good in emergencies. One manager at the grocery store said Parker stayed calm during an armed robbery, talked the guy down before police arrived. Kiana's pulse quickened. He has training. Definitely, Sandra agreed. Which brings me to what I found in the gaps. She pulled out a printout of a news article from 4 years ago. This is from San Francisco. Case involving a federal judge named Dorothy Hammond. She was receiving death threats related to a high-profile corruption trial. Her security detail prevented 3 separate assassination attempts. Kiana scanned the article. I don't see Parker's name anywhere. That's because executive protection professionals rarely get named in press coverage. But look at this. Sandra placed another document on the table. It was a court filing listing witnesses who had provided testimony in a sealed hearing. One name had been partially redacted, but was still partially visible. P. Davenport. Vincent's eyes widened. You think Parker Drake used to be P. Davenport? I think it's possible, Sandra said. The timeline fits, the skills fit, and there's more. After the corruption trial concluded, several witnesses connected to the case disappeared from public record. Some entered witness protection, others just vanished. What happened in that trial? Kiana asked. Sandra pulled up a news summary on her laptop. Judge Hammond was presiding over a case involving illegal pharmaceutical testing. The company being prosecuted had ties to organized crime and several dirty cops on their payroll. When the judge's security team uncovered evidence of police involvement in the threats, things got ugly. Whistleblowers started disappearing. Witnesses recanted. The case eventually fell apart, but not before several people's lives were destroyed. Kiana stared at the photograph of Lily. This little girl had been caught in the crossfire of something much bigger than herself, and her father had chosen to disappear rather than put her at risk. If I'm right, Sandra continued, Parker Drake used to be one of the best executive protection specialists on the West Coast. Worked for high net worth individuals, politicians, anyone who needed elite security. He wasn't just muscle, he was a strategist. Could read a room in seconds, identify threats before they materialized. And he was known for never using excessive force. That matched what Kiana had seen at the Gala. 8 seconds. 4 armed men neutralized with precision. No unnecessary violence, just controlled efficiency. Why would someone with those skills end up washing dishes? Vincent wondered aloud. Because, Kiana said quietly, he was protecting something more important than his career. Sandra nodded. I reached out to some contacts in the private security world, off the record, of course. A few people remembered someone matching Parker's description. They all said the same thing. He was brilliant, but he walked away after the Hammond case. Rumor was his family was threatened. He chose them over the job. Kiana sat back in her chair, processing everything. Parker Drake wasn't running from the law. He wasn't a criminal. He was a father who had sacrificed everything to keep his daughter safe. And she had been about to shine a very bright spotlight on him. Stop the search, Kiana said suddenly. Sandra blinked. Excuse me? I said, "Stop. Whatever you're doing, whatever databases you're checking, stop it now." Vincent looked confused. "Kiana, we're close to finding him." "Exactly. And if we can find him, so can the people he's hiding from." She stood up, pacing to the window. The city spread out below her, millions of people living their lives, each with their own secrets and struggles. "He saved my life, and I was about to repay him by destroying the safety he's built for his daughter." "So what do you want to do?" Sandra asked. Kiana turned back to them. "I want you to bury this. Whatever breadcrumbs you followed, cover them up. Make it harder for anyone else to find him, not easier." Vincent nodded slowly. "I can do that. Might even be able to add some false flags to lead people in the wrong direction." "Do it," Kiana said. "And Sandra, send me your final invoice." But the information in that folder never leaves this room. After they left, Kiana sat alone in the conference room, holding the photograph of Lily. She thought about what it must be like to be that little girl. To know your father was extraordinary, but watch him pretend to be ordinary. To understand, even at 10 years old, that safety required invisibility. Kiana had spent her entire career being visible, being recognized, being celebrated. She couldn't imagine choosing to fade into the background, to let the world think you were less than you were. But Parker had made that choice. For love. For his daughter. She placed the photograph back in the folder and locked it in her desk drawer. She wouldn't look for Parker Drake anymore. If he wanted to remain hidden, she would respect that. But she made herself a promise. If their paths ever crossed again, if fate gave her another chance to say thank you, she wouldn't let him disappear without knowing that someone understood. That someone saw the sacrifice he had made. That night, Kiana drafted a letter she would never send. In it, she wrote everything she had learned, everything she had felt, everything she wanted Parker to know. She wrote about how 8 seconds had reminded her that true strength wasn't about power or wealth or recognition. True strength was whispering, "Stay down," and then standing up when no one else would. She sealed the letter in an envelope, wrote Parker Drake on the front, and placed it in her desk beside the locked folder. Just in case. Just in case fate wasn't finished with them yet. Rain fell on Asherton like a whispered apology, soft and persistent. Kiana sat in the back of her town car, watching droplets race down the window as her driver navigated the evening traffic. She had just left a board meeting that had run 2 hours over schedule, and exhaustion pressed against her temples like a vice. "Take the Maple Street route," she told her driver. "I need to pick something up." 20 minutes later, she stood inside Rosewood Pharmacy, a small independent drugstore that still had a soda fountain and creaky wooden floors. Her usual pharmacy was a sleek chain near her office, but their computer system had crashed, and she needed her prescription refilled tonight. The pharmacist, an elderly man named Mr. Chen, smiled warmly as she approached. "Ms. Ford, good to see you. Your prescription will be ready in about 10 minutes. You're welcome to wait at the fountain if you'd like." Kiana thanked him and made her way to the vintage soda fountain, sliding onto one of the red vinyl stools. The place was nearly empty, just her and a father-daughter pair seated 2 stools down. The little girl was coloring in a workbook, her legs swinging cheerfully. The father sat beside her, helping with multiplication problems, his voice patient and gentle. Kiana ordered a ginger ale and tried not to eavesdrop, but something about the man's voice tugged at her memory. She glanced sideways. The man's profile was partially obscured by the hood of his jacket, but there was something familiar about the set of his shoulders, the careful way he moved. Then the little girl held up her workbook triumphantly. "I got it, Dad. 7 times 8 is 56. "That's my smart girl," he said, and Kiana's breath caught. That voice. She knew that voice. Parker Drake turned slightly to grab a napkin, and their eyes met. For a heartbeat, neither of them moved. Recognition flashed across his face, followed immediately by something that looked like panic. "Lily," he said quietly, already gathering their things. "Time to go." But Lily had seen Kiana now, and her eyes went wide. "Dad, that's her. That's the lady from the Gala." Parker closed his eyes briefly, and Kiana saw the internal debate playing out across his features. Run or stay? Hide or face this? Before he could decide, Lily had already slipped off her stool and approached Kiana with the fearless curiosity of someone too young to understand danger. "You're Miss Ford," Lily said, smiling. "My dad saved you." Kiana's throat tightened. Up close, the girl was even more beautiful than her photograph. Bright eyes, natural warmth, and an openness that suggested she hadn't yet learned to be afraid of the world. "He did," Kiana managed. "Your dad is very brave." "I know," Lily said proudly. "He's the best." Parker had stood now, resignation settling over his features. He walked over slowly, one hand gently guiding Lily back to his side. "Miss Ford," he said quietly. It wasn't a greeting, it was an acknowledgement. "Mr. Drake?" Kiana kept her voice neutral, non-threatening. "I didn't expect to run into you here." "We come every week," Lily volunteered. "Dad picks up his allergy medicine, and I get to have a root beer float." Parker's jaw tightened slightly. Kiana could see him calculating, trying to determine if this was a coincidence or if she had tracked him down. "I'm just here for a prescription." "Refill?" Kiana said, understanding his unspoken question. "My regular pharmacy system crashed. This is completely random, I promise." Some of the tension eased from his shoulders, but he still looked ready to bolt. "We should go, Lily." "But I didn't finish my float," Lily protested. An awkward silence stretched between them. Kiana made a decision. "Please," she said, "let me buy her another one. It's the least I can do." Parker looked like he wanted to refuse, but Lily was already climbing back onto her stool, and saying no would require an explanation he clearly didn't want to give. "5 minutes," he said finally, sitting back down but maintaining a careful distance. Kiana ordered Lily a fresh root beer float and watched as the girl attacked it with enthusiasm. For a moment, they all sat in uncomfortable silence. Then Kiana said, "I stopped looking for you." Parker's head turned sharply. "What?" "I was looking," she admitted. "For about 3 weeks. I wanted to thank you. But when I realized you were hiding for a reason, I stopped. Told my people to bury whatever they'd found." Parker studied her face, searching for the lie. He didn't find one. "Why?" he asked. "Because some debts can't be repaid, only respected." Lily looked between them, not fully understanding the conversation, but sensing its importance. Parker was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, "The men who attacked you. Did they ever say who sent them?" "They're not talking. But I know it's related to my company's encryption technology. Someone wants it badly enough to break every law on the books." "And you think they'll try again?" It wasn't a question, and Kiana didn't treat it like one. "Probably. Security has been increased. I'm being more careful." Parker nodded, but something in his expression suggested he didn't think increased security would be enough. "Dad's really good at keeping people safe," Lily offered, chocolate foam on her upper lip. "He used to do it for a job before we moved here." Parker's eyes closed briefly. Kiana pretended not to notice the slip. "I'm sure he was excellent at it." Kiana said gently. The pharmacist called Kiana's name. Her prescription was ready. She stood, smoothing her coat. It was good to see you again, Mr. Drake. And it was wonderful to meet you, Lily. Lily beamed. You too, Miss Ford. Kiana paid for her prescription and was almost to the door when Parker's voice stopped her. Miss Ford. She turned. He stood now, Lily's hand in his. For the first time, he met her eyes directly, and there was something raw in his expression. Be careful, he said. Men who are willing to attack you in public won't stop just because it failed once. They'll adapt. And next time, they won't underestimate you. I know, Kiana said. Do you have someone watching your house, your car, your regular roads? I have a security team. That's not what I asked. The intensity in his voice made her pause. This wasn't polite concern. This was professional assessment. I have a driver, she said, and my building has security. Parker shook his head slightly, frustrated. That's not enough. You need someone who thinks like them, someone who can see 3 steps ahead. Someone like you, Kiana said quietly. He didn't deny it. For a moment she thought he might offer. But then he looked down at Lily, and whatever words he'd been about to say died unspoken. Just be careful, he repeated. Kiana nodded. She wanted to say more, wanted to ask if they could meet again, if maybe she could buy Lily a proper thank you gift. But she could see the walls going back up around Parker, see him retreating into invisibility. Thank you, she said instead. For everything. She left the pharmacy and climbed back into her town car. As they pulled away, she looked back through the rain-streaked window. Parker and Lily were leaving too, him holding an umbrella over her head as they hurried to an old sedan parked at the curb. For just a moment, their eyes met through the rain and glass. And in that moment, Kiana saw something that gave her hope. He didn't look like a man who wanted to disappear anymore. He looked like a man who was tired of running. 3 days after the pharmacy encounter, Kiana received an envelope at her office. No return address, delivered by courier. Inside was a single piece of paper with a phone number and 4 words, in case you need it. She stared at the paper for a full minute before adding the number to her phone under a simple contact name. Parker. She didn't call. Not that day. Not that week. But knowing she could felt like a lifeline she hadn't known she needed. 2 weeks later, her town car broke down on a service road near Hartley Park. The driver apologized profusely, called for a tow truck, and offered to arrange alternative transportation. But Kiana, looking at the tree-lined park entrance, made an impulsive decision. I'll wait here, she said. I could use some air. She walked into the park, following a paved path that wound through oak trees and past a small pond. Families picnicked on the grass. Joggers passed by. It was refreshingly normal, a world away from boardrooms and security protocols. That's when she saw them. Parker and Lily sat at a weathered picnic table near the pond. Lily was doing homework while Parker read a book, occasionally looking up to watch the ducks gliding across the water. Kiana's first instinct was to turn around, to respect his privacy. But Lily spotted her first. Miss Ford? The girl waved enthusiastically. Parker looked up, surprise flickering across his face. Then, unexpectedly, he smiled. A small smile, but genuine. Car trouble? He guessed as she approached. How did you know? You're in a park on a Wednesday afternoon wearing a business suit. Either car trouble or you're hiding from someone. Kiana laughed, and the sound surprised her. The former. My driver's arranging a tow. Want to sit? Lily asked, already making space, on the bench. Kiana hesitated, but Parker nodded. It's okay. She sat, and for a few minutes, they simply existed in comfortable silence. Lily worked on her math homework. Parker went back to his book. Kiana watched the ducks. Do you come here often? She finally asked. Every Wednesday, Lily answered. It's our tradition. After school, we come here, do homework, and feed the ducks. We don't have much, Parker said quietly, but we have time. That matters more. Kiana thought about her own schedule, the back-to-back meetings, the working dinners, the weekends spent catching up on emails. When was the last time she had simply sat and watched ducks? What are you reading? She asked Parker. He showed her the cover, a thriller about corporate espionage. Research, he said with a hint of irony. Any good insights? The protagonist makes too many rookie mistakes. Real security is about prevention, not reaction. Is that what you did? Before? Parker glanced at Lily, who was absorbed in her homework. Yeah, I assessed risk, designed protection protocols, trained security teams. The best days were the ones where nothing happened because we'd already thought of everything. Why did you stop? He was quiet for so long she thought he wouldn't answer. Then he said, because I was asked to choose between doing the right thing and keeping my daughter safe. I chose her. That must have been hard. Easiest decision I ever made. He looked at Lily with such profound love that Kiana felt her chest tighten. Dad, Lily said without looking up from her homework. You can tell her. She's nice. Parker sighed. She's too perceptive for her own good. I get it from you, Lily countered. Parker met Kiana's eyes. I used to work high-level executive protection. One of my clients was targeted because of a case she was presiding over. I uncovered corruption that went deep, involving people who didn't want to be exposed. When I testified, I made powerful enemies. Enemies who threatened my family. So you disappeared, Kiana said. So we started over. New city, new name, new life. Lily doesn't remember much from before. She was young. Do you miss it? The work? Parker considered the question. I miss the purpose. I miss knowing I was making a difference. But I don't miss the danger. And I definitely don't miss being away from her. He nodded toward Lily. You made a difference at the gala, Kiana said softly. You still make a difference. That was a mistake, Parker said, but there was no conviction in his voice. I should have stayed invisible. But you didn't, because that's who you are. You can't help helping people. Lily looked up then, grinning. That's what I told him. They all laughed, and the tension that had been hovering over the conversation dissolved. Kiana's phone buzzed, her driver texting that the replacement car was 15 minutes away. I should go, she said, but she didn't move immediately. Ms. Ford, Lily said, do you want to help us feed the ducks before you leave? Dad always brings extra bread. Kiana looked at Parker, who shrugged. Fair warning, the ducks here are aggressive. I think I can handle it, Kiana said. They walked to the pond's edge, and Parker handed Kiana a bag of torn bread pieces. Lily demonstrated the proper throwing technique, which apparently involved maximum dramatic flair. As ducks swarmed around them, quacking enthusiastically, Kiana realized she couldn't remember the last time she had done something this simple, this pointless, this perfect. Thank you, she said to Parker as they walked back toward the parking lot. For the bread? For letting me in, even just a little. Parker stopped, hands in his jacket pockets. You're not what I expected. What did you expect? Someone who'd forget about the waiter who helped her. Someone who'd move on. I'm not good at moving on, Kiana admitted, especially when someone saves my life and then disappears. I'm still not sure I should have reappeared. I am. The words came out more intensely than she intended. Parker looked at her, really looked at her, and something shifted between them. Not romance, not yet, but the recognition of two people who had been alone for too long, finally finding someone who understood. Lily? Parker called. Come on, we need to get home. As they said their goodbyes, Lily hugged Kiana spontaneously. You should come feed the ducks with us again sometime. I'd like that, Kiana said, surprised to find she meant it. After they left, Kiana stood in the park until her car arrived, thinking about second chances and the strange path that led people to each other. She had built an empire, commanded respect, achieved everything she'd set out to accomplish. But she had never felt as grounded as she did sitting on a weathered picnic bench, watching a father help his daughter with homework. Maybe success, she thought, wasn't just about what you built. Maybe it was also about who you let in. It started with a photograph. Kiana found it slipped under her office door on a Tuesday morning, sealed in a plain manila envelope. No postage, no return address, no note. Just a single image printed on glossy paper. The photograph showed Lily leaving Brookfield Elementary, her backpack bouncing as she skipped down the steps. The timestamp in the corner read 3:14 p.m., yesterday's date. Someone had been watching her. Someone had been close enough to capture the individual freckles on her cheeks. Kiana's hands shook as she immediately dialed the number Parker had given her. He answered on the first ring. What's wrong? How did you know something was wrong? You've never called this number before. What happened? She told him about the photograph. The line went silent for so long she thought the call had dropped. Parker? Where are you right now? His voice had changed, become harder, more focused. My office. Don't leave. Lock your door. I'm coming to you. But Lily is at school with 2 off-duty police officers I called the second you said her name. She's safe. You're not. 20 minutes later, Parker walked into her office wearing dark jeans and a jacket that couldn't quite hide the tension in his shoulders. He moved through the space like he was cataloging exits, sight lines, vulnerabilities. Kiana handed him the envelope. He studied the photograph with professional detachment, but she saw the muscle jump in his jaw. This isn't random, he said. This is a message. I know. They're telling you they can get to anyone. That security doesn't matter. That walls don't matter. He looked up at her. They're trying to isolate you. Make you feel powerless. Kiana wrapped her arms around herself. It's working. Parker set down the photograph and pulled out his phone, making a call. Vincent, it's Parker Drake. Yes, the waiter. I need you in Miss Ford's office now, and bring your secure laptop. He hung up before Vincent could respond. You know my head of security? Kiana asked. We've never met, but I know his reputation. Former Secret Service, solid instincts, plays by the rules. Parker's expression darkened. The rules won't help us here. Vincent arrived 7 minutes later, surprise registering on his face when he saw Parker. You're the ghost from the Gala. And you're the guy who tried to find me. Parker replied evenly. We don't have time for introductions. Someone just threatened Ms. Ford's life using a photograph of my daughter. Vincent's demeanor shifted immediately. He opened his laptop, and Kiana watched as Parker walked him through everything, his analysis sharp and methodical. The angle suggests the photo was taken from a vehicle, Parker explained. Probably a sedan, given the height. The photographer knew exactly when school let out, which means they've been surveilling for days, maybe weeks. This wasn't opportunistic. This was planned. The 4 men from the Gala, Vincent said, pulling up files. They finally started talking. Plea deals. Turns out they were hired through an intermediary. The money trail leads to a shell company registered in the Cayman Islands. Let me guess, Parker said. The shell company is owned by another shell company. 3 layers deep. But we got a break. One of the attackers recognized a voice on a phone call. He couldn't give us a name, but he described the accent. British, educated, older. Kiana felt ice settle in her stomach. Sterling Whitmore. Both men looked at her. He's the CEO of Tech Vault Industries, she explained. They made an aggressive offer to acquire Horizon Dynamics 8 months ago. I refused. He called it a mistake. Said I was making enemies I couldn't afford. Parker's eyes narrowed. Tell me about Tech Vault. They're a data security conglomerate. Publicly, they provide cybersecurity services. But there have been rumors, allegations of corporate espionage, bribing officials, even blackmail. Nothing proven, but the pattern is there. Vincent was already typing. Tech Vault's stock has been dropping for 6 months. They need a win, something revolutionary to restore investor confidence. The Sentinel Protocol, Kiana said quietly. My encryption system. With it, Tech Vault could corner the market on government contracts alone. We're talking billions in revenue. Parker walked to the window, looking down at the street below. So they tried to grab you at the Gala, probably to force you to sign over the patents. When that failed, they switched tactics. Intimidation, Vincent said. Make her afraid. Make her vulnerable. And when intimidation doesn't work? Kiana asked, though she already knew the answer. Parker turned back to her. Escalation. As if summoned by the word, Kiana's phone rang. Unknown number. She looked at Parker, who nodded. She answered on speaker. This is Kiana Ford. Ms. Ford. The voice was smooth, cultured, with a precise British accent. I trust you received our photograph. Charming girl. It would be tragic if anything happened to her. Kiana's free hand clenched into a fist. Who is this? Someone who's offering you a choice. Sign over the Sentinel Protocol to a private acquisition firm I'll designate, or the next photograph will be far less pleasant. You have 48 hours. I'll go to the police. And tell them what? That you received an anonymous phone call? That someone took a photograph in a public place? Please, Ms. Ford. We both know you're smarter than that. A pause. 48 hours. Choose wisely. The line went dead. The silence in the office was suffocating. Then Vincent said, We can trace that. They used a burner routed through multiple servers, Parker said. You'll get nowhere. So what do we do? Kiana asked. Parker met her eyes. We make them think they're winning, and then we destroy them. Over the next 6 hours, they built a plan. Vincent would coordinate with the FBI, building a case quietly while maintaining the appearance of normal operations. Kiana would continue her regular schedule, acting afraid but cooperative. And Parker would do what he did best. He would become invisible and watch. I need access to your company's security feeds, Parker told Vincent. Everything. Parking garages, elevators, exterior cameras. Done. I need a list of everyone who's had access to Ms. Ford's schedule for the past 3 months. I'll have it in an hour. And I need you to leak something. Parker turned to Kiana. Tomorrow you're going to have a very public meeting with your legal team. Make it look like you're preparing to negotiate. You want them to think I'm giving in, Kiana said. I want them confident. Confident people make mistakes. After Vincent left to coordinate with his team, Kiana and Parker stood alone in her office. The city lights were beginning to glow as evening settled over Asherton. "They threatened your daughter," Kiana said. "You should take Lily and disappear. This isn't your fight." "They made it my fight the second they took that photograph." Parker's voice was quiet but absolute. "I've spent 3 years running, keeping her safe by staying invisible. But invisible doesn't work when someone's already seen you. I never meant for any of this, I know, but it's happening anyway." He walked closer. "I told myself I was done with this life, that I could just be a father, work quiet jobs, stay off the radar. But the truth is, I'm tired of running. And I'm tired of watching bad people win because good people are too afraid to fight back." "What about Lily?" "Lily is with my former partner's family in the next state. I moved her this afternoon. She thinks it's a fun sleepover. She's safe." Kiana felt tears prick her eyes. "You've already sacrificed so much. Then let's make sure it means something." Parker pulled out a small device from his pocket. "This is a panic button. Keep it on you at all times. One press and I'll know you're in trouble." She took it, the metal cool against her palm. "Where will you be?" "Close, always close." He moved toward the door, then paused. "Kiana, these people are professionals. They won't stop with threats. When they move, they'll move fast and hard. I need you to trust me completely." "I do," she said, and realized she meant it absolutely. After Parker left, Kiana stood at her window, looking out at the city she had conquered through intelligence and determination. She had built her empire by playing by the rules, by being smarter and working harder than everyone else. But the people coming for her didn't play by rules. They played by power and violence and fear. For the first time in her life, Kiana Ford understood what it meant to be truly afraid. Not for herself, but for a 10-year-old girl with bright eyes who had done nothing wrong except have a father brave enough to help a stranger. She touched the panic button in her pocket. 48 hours until the deadline. 48 hours to turn prey into predator. She pulled out her phone and began making calls. If they wanted a war, she would give them one. But she wouldn't fight it alone. Not anymore. The Asherton Museum of Contemporary Art was hosting its annual Innovation Gala, a black tie affair where technology leaders, philanthropists, and politicians mingled beneath soaring glass ceilings and million-dollar installations. Kiana had committed to attending months ago, and Vincent had argued she should cancel given the current threats. But Parker had disagreed. "They expect her to hide. We use that expectation against them." So here she was, walking through the museum sculpture garden in a midnight blue gown, security details shadowing her every move. Vincent had tripled her protection team. There were plainclothes officers positioned throughout the venue. The FBI had agents embedded in the catering staff. Parker was somewhere in the crowd, invisible as always. She hadn't seen him arrive, but she knew he was there. Could feel his presence like a shield she couldn't see but trusted completely. The evening progressed smoothly. Kiana gave her rehearsed speech about innovation and responsibility. She smiled for photographs. She made small talk with donors who had no idea her world was crumbling behind the facade. Then her phone vibrated. A text from an unknown number. 3rd floor, East Wing. Come alone, or the girl dies. Her blood turned to ice. Lily was supposed to be safe, hidden away with Parker's trusted contacts. But the message included a photograph. Recent. Lily sleeping in an unfamiliar bed. A stuffed elephant clutched to her chest. They had found her. Kiana's vision tunneled, her carefully constructed calm shattered. She pressed the panic button in her clutch and began walking toward the East Wing staircase. Vincent appeared at her elbow immediately. "Where are you going?" She showed him the text. His face went white. "It's a trap." "I know. But what if they really have her?" "Ms. Ford, we can't." A second text arrived. A video this time. 3 seconds of Lily stirring in her sleep, the timestamp showing it was recorded 20 minutes ago. Kiana didn't wait for Vincent's permission. She moved toward the stairs, her security team scrambling to follow. But as they reached the 3rd floor, the lights went out. Emergency lighting kicked in, bathing everything in red. Then came the sound of gunfire from below. Screams erupted from the main gallery. "It's a diversion," Vincent shouted into his radio. "All units, we have an active shooter situation, main floor. Protect the civilians." Most of her security detail rushed downstairs toward the chaos. Vincent grabbed Kiana's arm. "We need to get you out of here." But Kiana pulled away, running toward the East Wing. If there was even a chance Lily was really here, she had to try. The East Wing was dark, silent. She ran through galleries filled with abstract sculptures that cast twisted shadows in the emergency lighting. Her heels echoed on marble floors. Then she saw her, a small figure slumped in a chair in the corner of the last gallery. Dark hair, small frame. "Lily!" Kiana rushed forward. Vincent shouted behind her. "Wait, it's not too late." As Kiana reached the figure, she realized it was a mannequin, dressed in a girl's clothing, a wig covering its plastic head. She had walked into the trap. The gallery doors slammed shut, locks engaged with metallic clicks. 4 men emerged from the shadows, their faces covered, weapons drawn. The leader stepped forward. "Ms. Ford, finally we can have a proper conversation." Vincent moved in front of Kiana, his own weapon drawn. "Federal agents are on their way. You won't make it out of this building." The man laughed. "The federal agents are busy with the active shooter we staged downstairs. By the time they realize it's a distraction, we'll be gone. And so will Miss Ford." One of the other men raised his weapon toward Vincent. The shot was deafening in the enclosed space. Vincent went down hard, clutching his shoulder. Blood spread across his white shirt. Kiana screamed, dropping to her knees beside him. "Vincent!" "I'm okay," he gasped. "Body armor. But it still hurts like hell." The leader grabbed Kiana's arm, yanking her to her feet. "Enough dramatics. You're coming with us. You're going to sign some papers, transfer some patents, and then maybe we'll let you and that little girl live." Kiana fought, but he was too strong. He began dragging her toward a service door hidden behind a large sculpture. Then the emergency lights went out completely. The gallery plunged into absolute darkness. In the blackness, chaos erupted. Kiana felt the grip on her arm release. She heard bodies hitting the floor, grunts of pain, the clatter of weapons being disarmed. Someone grabbed her hand, gentle but firm. Parker's voice in her ear. "Stay with me. Don't let go." He guided her through the darkness with perfect confidence, navigating obstacles she couldn't see. Behind them, she heard the men shouting, confused, trying to regroup. Emergency lighting flickered back on. They were in a service corridor now. Parker was dressed in black, his face smudged with something dark to reduce visibility. He looked nothing like the gentle father from the park. This was the man he used to be. The one who had testified against corruption, the one who had walked away from everything to protect his daughter. "Lily," Kiana gasped. "They said they had—" "Lily is safe. The photograph was old, taken weeks ago. They were fishing, hoping to panic you. His voice was calm, but his eyes were fire. It worked. I'm sorry. Don't apologize. Use it. They think they've won. They think you're weak and afraid. Show them they're wrong. They emerged into another gallery. Police were flooding the building now, responding to the fake shooter. Real FBI agents were setting up a perimeter. But Parker pulled Kiana in a different direction. We're not done yet. The men who grabbed you were foot soldiers. I want the one giving orders. How do we find him? Parker smiled, and it wasn't kind. We already did. While everyone was focused on you, I planted a tracker on their communications device. Right now, I know exactly where they're running to. In the East Wing gallery, Vincent sat against a wall, paramedics treating his shoulder. The 4 attackers were in custody, zip-tied and silent. But Parker was right. These weren't the masterminds. They were pawns. The real enemy was still out there, watching, waiting, confident in their plan. As police secured the museum, Parker made a call. It's done. Target is mobile. Heading northeast on Highway 7. Black SUV, license plate Charlie Delta Romeo 529. He hung up and looked at Kiana. FBI will intercept in approximately 8 minutes. Who was driving that SUV? Sterling Whitmore. He was coordinating from a command vehicle 2 blocks away, thought he was untouchable. Parker's expression was grim. He was wrong. Kiana felt her knees weaken. Parker caught her, steadying her against him. It's over, he said quietly. You're safe now. But as she stood in his arms, surrounded by police and chaos and the wreckage of the evening, Kiana realized it wasn't over. Not really. Because somewhere in the rubble of tonight's attack was a truth she couldn't ignore anymore. She didn't just trust Parker Drake. She needed him, and she was terrified of what that meant. The FBI field office was cold, fluorescent lit, and buzzing with controlled chaos. Kiana sat in a conference room, wrapped in a blanket someone had draped over her shoulders, watching through one-way glass as Sterling Whitmore was processed in the adjacent room. He still wore his expensive suit, still carried himself with arrogant confidence. But there was fear in his eyes now. The kind of fear that came from realizing you had miscalculated badly. Parker stood beside her, arms crossed, his expression unreadable. Vincent was down the hall getting his shoulder properly treated, but he had refused to leave until he had seen Whitmore in custody with his own eyes. Special Agent Rebecca Torres, no relation to Vincent despite the shared surname, entered the room carrying a thick folder. She was 50-ish, sharp-eyed, and had the air of someone who had seen everything twice. Miss Ford, Mr. Drake, she acknowledged. We've been building a case against Tech Vault Industries for 18 months. What happened tonight gave us everything we needed. She spread photographs across the table. Surveillance images of the men who had attacked Kiana at the museum. Financial records showing payments from Tech Vault shell companies. Phone records linking Whitmore directly to the hired attackers. The tracker you planted on their communication device, Agent Torres said, looking at Parker, led us to a warehouse in the industrial district. We found encrypted servers, forged documents, and evidence of at least 7 other corporate espionage operations. Will it stick? Kiana asked. Whitmore has resources. Lawyers who can make evidence disappear. Agent Torres smiled grimly. Not this time, because we also found something else. She pulled up a recording on her laptop. One of Whitmore's associates decided to cooperate. Full confession in exchange for a reduced sentence. He's giving us everything, names, dates, bank accounts, the entire operation. The recording played. a nervous man in his 30s describing how TechVault had systematically targeted competitors, stolen intellectual property, and when theft didn't work, they escalated to intimidation and violence. Kiana Ford wasn't even the first target. Agent Torres explained. 3 other tech CEOs in the past 2 years. 2 of them sold their companies under duress. The third disappeared and is still missing. Kiana felt sick. And you knew this was happening? We suspected. But tech executives rarely report these crimes. They're afraid of looking weak, of scaring investors. And the ones who do report usually end up settling out of court before we can build a criminal case. Agent Torres met her eyes. You didn't run. You didn't negotiate. You stood your ground. That gave us the opening we needed. Parker moved to the window, looking down at the parking lot where federal vehicles sat with lights flashing. What about the people working for Whitmore? The ones who took the photographs, made the threats? We're rounding them up now. The tracker you planted didn't just give us Whitmore's location. It recorded every transmission they made tonight. We have voice identification, location data, everything. Kiana stood, walking to stand beside Parker. How did you know? She asked him quietly. How did you know they'd coordinate from a nearby vehicle? Because that's what I would have done, Parker replied. Command and control operations require proximity but safety. Whitmore wanted to watch his plan unfold, but he wouldn't risk being inside the museum when it went wrong. You were 3 steps ahead the whole time. That's the job, or it used to be. He glanced at her. You did well tonight. Most people would have frozen. I was terrified. Being terrified and being paralyzed aren't the same thing. You kept moving. That's what mattered. Agent Torres cleared her throat. Mr. Drake, I need to ask. How did you acquire the skills necessary to plant a tracker on a moving communications device without being detected? Parker turned slowly. Is that relevant to your case against Whitmore? No, she admitted. But it's relevant to understanding who you are. My preliminary background check suggests Parker Drake has only existed for 3 years. Kiana tensed, but Parker remained calm. I used to work executive protection. I testified in a federal case involving judicial corruption. People wanted me dead for it. I changed my name to protect my daughter. The Hammond case in San Francisco, Agent Torres said. It wasn't a question. Yes. You were the lead security specialist who uncovered the assassination plot. Yes. Agent Torres studied him for a long moment. Then she closed her folder. The people you testified against, most of them are still in prison. The rest are scattered. You're not as much of a target as you think you are. Parker's jaw tightened. With respect, Agent Torres, I'm not willing to bet my daughter's safety on not as much. Fair enough. She stood. For what it's worth, what you did tonight saved lives. The museum evacuation went smoothly because you disabled the threat before it could escalate. I'd like to include your testimony in the case against Whitmore. Under seal, Parker said immediately. Under seal, Agent Torres agreed. Your real name, your current identity, all protected. You'll testify via closed circuit from a secure location. Whitmore will never know who you are. Parker looked at Kiana. She saw the question in his eyes. This was her decision, her case, her fight. Do it, she said. Help us put him away. Over the next 3 days, the case against Sterling Whitmore and TechVault Industries unraveled like a carefully pulled thread. Each revelation led to another. Corporate board members turning on each other, shareholders demanding answers, stock prices plummeting. Parker gave his testimony via video link, his face digitally obscured, his voice modulated. But his analysis was devastating. He walked federal prosecutors through exactly how the museum attack had been planned, what the tactical objectives were, and how Whitmore's coordination from the command vehicle proved direct involvement. Kiana testified in person, describing the months of escalating threats, the photograph of Lily, the terror of being trapped in that darkened gallery. And slowly, methodically, justice began to take shape. On the fourth day, Sterling Whitmore was formally charged with conspiracy, attempted kidnapping, corporate espionage, and a dozen other counts. His bail was set at $20 million. TechVault's board of directors voted unanimously to remove him as CEO and cooperate fully with federal investigators. Kiana watched the news coverage from her office, Vincent standing beside her. His arm was in a sling, but he was already back at work. "It's really over," he said. "Is it?" Kiana asked. "Whitmore has resources, appeals, lawyers who'll fight this for years." "Maybe, but he's finished in this industry, and the others like him just learned a very public lesson. You don't go after Kiana Ford." She smiled faintly. "I had help." "Yeah, you did. Where is Parker now?" "I don't know. He left after his testimony, said Lily needed him." Vincent nodded slowly. "He's a good man. Hard to find people like that." Kiana didn't respond, because the truth was, she didn't just think Parker was a good man. She thought he might be the best man she had ever met, and she had no idea if she would ever see him again. That night, Kiana returned to her penthouse alone. She poured herself a glass of wine and stood at the window, looking out at the city that sparkled with a million lights. Her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "Lily wants to know if you'd like to join us for pancakes this weekend. No pressure, just pancakes." Kiana felt tears spring to her eyes. She typed back, "I would love that." 3 dots appeared, then disappeared, then appeared again. Finally, "Good, because she's been asking about you every day." Kiana smiled through her tears. She had won the battle against Whitmore. She had protected her company, vindicated herself, and helped bring down a criminal operation. But the real victory, she realized, was much simpler. She had found people who saw her not as a CEO or a target or a transaction. They saw her as Kiana, just Kiana. And sometimes that was more valuable than any empire she could build. 6 months later, the morning sun poured through the tall windows of the Asherton Community Center, illuminating a space that hummed with possibility. The scent of fresh paint still lingered, mixing with coffee and the excited chatter of people gathering for the grand opening. The building had once been an abandoned warehouse in the Oak Ridge district. Now it was something else entirely, something transformative. Above the entrance, brushed steel letters spelled out the center's name, the Lily Drake Foundation for Personal Safety and Empowerment. Kiana stood near the back of the crowd, watching volunteers arrange chairs and set up registration tables. She wore simple jeans and a sweater, no designer gown, no corporate armor, just herself. Parker emerged from a side office, Lily bouncing beside him. The girl had grown in the past 6 months, her confidence blooming like a flower finally given enough sunlight. She wore a purple dress she had picked out herself and carried a stack of brochures with fierce determination. When she spotted Kiana, her face lit up. "Ms. Kiana, you're here." Kiana had long since given up asking Lily to call her Ms. Ford. The girl had decided Ms. Kiana suited her better, and who was Kiana to argue? "I wouldn't miss this for anything," Kiana said, kneeling to give Lily a hug. Parker approached more slowly, but the smile he wore was genuine, warm. Over the past months, Something had shifted between them. The careful distance had eroded, replaced by trust, respect, and something deeper neither of them had quite named yet. "Ready for the big day?" Kiana asked him. "No," Parker admitted. "But Lily is, and that's what matters." The foundation had been Lily's idea, actually. 3 months ago, over pancakes at their now regular Saturday breakfast tradition, she had asked why her dad didn't teach other people how to stay safe like he had taught her. Parker had tried to deflect, but Kiana had seen the spark in the girl's eyes and recognized it immediately. It was the same determination that had built Horizon Dynamics from a startup into an industry leader. "What if we made it happen?" Kiana had asked. "What if we created a place where people could learn real safety skills, where kids and adults could train together?" Parker had resisted at first. Too visible, he had argued. Too risky. But Lily had looked at him with those impossibly wise eyes and said, "Dad, you taught me that hiding doesn't make you safe. Being prepared does." And that had been that. Kiana had provided the funding. Parker had designed the curriculum. And together, they had transformed an abandoned building into a community center that offered free self-defense classes, threat assessment training, and confidence-building workshops. The waiting list already had 300 names. Now, as the opening ceremony began, Kiana watched Parker reluctantly take the podium. He hated public speaking, hated being in the spotlight. But Lily stood beside him, and for her, he would do anything. "Thank you for coming," Parker began, his voice steady despite his obvious discomfort. "This place exists because of one little girl who asked a big question. She wanted to know why good people stay quiet when bad things happen." Lily beamed up at him. "For a long time," Parker continued, "I thought keeping my daughter safe meant keeping us invisible. I thought if we stayed quiet enough, small enough, the world would leave us alone. But I was wrong." He glanced at Kiana, and she saw gratitude in his expression. Safety doesn't come from hiding. It comes from preparation, from community, from people deciding they matter enough to protect themselves and each other. He gestured to the training mats visible through glass walls, the equipment, the spaces designed for learning. "This center will teach practical skills. How to recognize danger, how to de-escalate confrontations, how to defend yourself if you have no other choice." A murmur of approval rippled through the crowd. "But more than that," Parker said, his voice growing stronger, "we're going to teach something else. That ordinary people can do extraordinary things. That you don't need a badge or a uniform to stand up for what's right. You just need courage and the willingness to act." The applause was immediate and thunderous. After Parker stepped down, it was Kiana's turn. She had prepared remarks, bullet points on note cards. But as she looked out at the crowd, at the families and individuals who had come seeking something this place could offer, she set the cards aside. "My name is Kiana Ford," she began. 6 months ago, 4 armed men tried to kidnap me at a gala. I was terrified. I was powerless. And then someone I had never met decided my life was worth protecting. She gestured toward Parker, who stood at the side of the stage, visibly uncomfortable with the attention. Parker Drake didn't know me. He didn't owe me anything. He had every reason to stay in the background, to keep himself and his daughter safe by doing nothing. But he didn't. Because that's not who he is. Kiana's voice caught, and she took a moment to compose herself. In the months since that night, I've learned something important. Real strength isn't about power or money or influence. Real strength is about showing up for people who can't show up for themselves. It's about whispering, "Stay down," and then standing up so others don't have to. She looked directly at Parker now. This foundation exists because a father taught his daughter that helping people matters more than staying safe. Because a 10-year-old girl had the courage to ask why her dad wasn't sharing his gifts with the world. And because sometimes the quietest heroes teach the loudest lessons. The crowd rose in a standing ovation. Parker looked like he wanted to disappear through the floor, but Lily grabbed his hand and pulled him forward, forcing him to accept the recognition. After the ceremony, as volunteers gave tours and the first-class registrations were processed, Kiana found Parker standing in the main training room, watching through the windows as Lily demonstrated a basic self-defense move to a group of younger kids. "She's a natural teacher," Kiana observed. "She gets that from her mother," Parker said quietly. "She was a teacher too, elementary school. She would have loved this." It was the first time Parker had mentioned Lily's mother directly. Kiana waited, sensing there was more. "She died when Lily was 3. Parker continued. "Car accident. Drunk driver ran a red light." His voice was steady, but Kiana could hear the old pain beneath it. "That's when I left executive protection initially. I couldn't be away from Lily for days at a time, couldn't risk leaving her alone if something happened to me." "I'm sorry," Kiana said. "I thought if I could just keep her safe, keep us both small and invisible, that would be enough. That I'd be honoring my wife's memory by protecting our daughter at all costs." He turned to Kiana. "But you helped me see that I was teaching Lily the wrong lesson. I was teaching her that safety comes from hiding, from being less than you are. And now? Now I'm teaching her that safety comes from strength, from community, from knowing you're capable and prepared." He smiled slightly. "It's terrifying, honestly. But it's also right." Kiana stepped closer. Over the months, they had danced around the connection between them, both too cautious to name it, too scarred by past losses to risk new vulnerability. But standing here, in this space they had built together, Kiana felt brave. "I've been thinking," she said carefully, "about what comes next. For me, I mean." Parker raised an eyebrow. "Thinking about stepping down from Horizon Dynamics?" "No, but thinking about balance, about making space for things that matter beyond quarterly earnings." She met his eyes. "About making space for people who matter." Something shifted in Parker's expression. "Kiana, I'm not asking for anything," she said quickly. "I just want you to know that these past 6 months, working on this project with you and Lily, have been some of the best of my life. And I'd like to keep being part of this. Part of what you're building here." Parker was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, "Lily asked me last night if you were going to be her new mom." Kiana's breath caught. "I told her life doesn't work that way, that adults have to figure things out slowly, carefully, that I couldn't make promises about the future." "What did she say?" Parker smiled. "She said I was overthinking it, that sometimes you just know when people fit together." He took a step closer. "She might be smarter than both of us." Kiana laughed, feeling tears prick her eyes. "She definitely is." They stood there, close enough to touch, but not quite touching. Both of them aware that this moment mattered, that what came next would shape everything. Then Lily burst through, the door breaking the spell. "Miss Kiana, come see. I taught a girl how to do a proper stance, and she got it on the first try." Kiana let herself be pulled away, but not before she saw the look on Parker's face. Hope. Actual hope. As the day drew to a close and the last visitors filtered out, the 3 of them sat on the front steps of the center, watching the sun set over Asherton. "This is just the beginning," Lily said, swinging her legs. Next, we're going to have classes in schools, and maybe even online videos so people everywhere can learn. Ambitious, Parker said, ruffling her hair. I learned from the best, Lily replied, grinning at both of them. Kiana pulled out her phone and took a photo. Parker, Lily, and herself, sitting on the steps of something they had built together. Something that would help people. Something that mattered. Thank you, Parker said quietly. For what? For seeing us. For not letting me stay invisible. Kiana leaned her head on his shoulder, a gesture that felt natural, right? Thank you for teaching me that strength doesn't always look like power. Sometimes it looks like pancakes on Saturdays and a 10-year-old with big dreams. Lily grinned. And sometimes it looks like a CEO who learns to feed ducks. They all laughed, and in that moment, Kiana understood something fundamental. She had spent her entire life building an empire, proving she was strong enough, smart enough, successful enough. But the real achievement wasn't Horizon Dynamics or the Sentinel Protocol or any quarterly report. It was this. 3 people who had found each other in chaos and chosen to build something beautiful from the wreckage. As stars began to appear in the darkening sky, Kiana thought about the future. There would be challenges ahead. Parker's past might catch up with them. Her company would face new competitors. Life would throw obstacles their way. But they would face it together. A father who had learned to step into the light. A daughter who believed ordinary people could be heroes. And a woman who had discovered that the strongest foundations were built not on power, but on trust, courage, and love. The Lily Drake Foundation for Personal Safety and Empowerment would help thousands of people in the years to come. But its first success story was already complete. 3 people who had saved each other by simply showing up, speaking up, and refusing to stay down. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.